Is that time right? 8:35. Gosh, I guess I'll have to cut this in half an hour. Well, thank you very much, guys, for Darren, for having me here. Before I speak, guys, yes, I'm going to do it. I do it all the time. And I'm doing it because, well, I'll tell you why I'm doing it in a minute. The very first thing I want to do before I say anything else is I want to say thank you to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. When I stood on that stage Tuesday night, having become the nominee for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, the only thing I could think of all the days when you were poor, and I hope he's listening to me right now. This is why I talk about those days, because I never want to forget where I came from. We have far too many people serving in the halls of government right now that have forgotten where they came from. They have forgotten the days when they were dirt poor. They have forgotten the days when they made those bad mistakes. They have forgotten the days when they sat around the table and cried because they didn't have enough money to pay the bills. They've forgotten the days when they were hungry. And because they have, they've forgotten the people of North Carolina, and they've forgotten the people of this nation. It is imperative, if you are going to serve, key word, not lead. Elected officials are not leaders. They are servants to the people. They should be like Jesus Christ. And the very first thing that Jesus Christ was concerned with was being a servant to those he was giving his life for. An elected official should remember that. So I always want to remember from whence I came, because from whence I came made me what I am today. And I need to remember that. The reason why I give thanks to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ every time I speak is because, yes, we need a political revival in this nation. We need to go back to those time-honored traditions that made this nation great to begin with. But if there's anything this nation needs more than that, we need a spiritual revival in this nation. We need to bring back the principles of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ that built this nation. We need to return them to government. We need to return it to our schools. We need to return it to our police departments, our sheriff's offices, all across the board. Because we've forgotten about those principles in many places. And because we see ourselves failing. So, again, I thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ first and foremost. So now, why am I standing here in front of you? Of course, I am the nominee for the Republican Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. But here it is, folks. The thing I want to point out to you today is this. I want to remind you of the stark differences between us and them. And yes, I said us and them. You see, because once upon a time in this country, there were Republicans and there were Democrats. And there was something that united Republicans and Democrats. And that was a love of the United States of America. It was a love of our Constitution. We had our differences. But those in the Democratic Party once upon a time loved this nation. Folks, that no longer exist. We are not fighting against people who want the United States to remain a constitutional republic. Let me say that again. A constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. The mob does not rule in this country. Not even the majority rules in this country. We have a series of checks and balances that are spelled out by our Constitution that dictate how we are to be governed. Those on the other side don't believe that and don't want that anymore. They want to do away with our electoral college because of it. But we need to remember, folks, that inside that constitutional republic, the most important aspect of that constitutional republic is this. It's not our rights. It's not our freedoms. It's not liberty. It is our responsibility. One word, responsibility. I had somebody challenge me on that also and said, could you please show me in the Constitution where it says anything about responsibility? My reply was, is there anything in the Constitution about breathing? about taking one foot and putting it in front of the other in order to move. You see, to our founders, responsibility was like breath itself. They felt no need to point out the fact that you need to be responsible for yourself and your family and your community and your state and your nation and where it goes politically. We hear people say all the time, oh, I don't do politics. I don't get involved in politics. Guess what? When you get up out of bed in the morning, you're involved in politics. As a matter of fact, when you're laying in bed, you're involved in politics. Politics touches every aspect of your life, from where you work to where you worship. It is inescapable. And there's two facts about it. Either you're going to be the person to decide how you're governed, or other people will do it for you. And I can guarantee you, if you stay asleep at the wheel and allow other people to do it for you, you'll find yourself being ruled by tyrants. It's happened time and time again in all around the globe. Those who were free fell asleep at the wheel. In Venezuela, they fell asleep at the wheel, and look what happened. They went from being one of the most prosperous nations in the Western Hemisphere to eating their pets and eating zoo animals and being run over by military vehicles in the streets while their leader sits as a millionaire. Does that sound familiar to you? You see, folks, we've got to remember that the responsibility is with us. We can literally change the course of not just this nation. We can change the course of the world. We can change the course of the world by raising up our voices, having our votes casting our votes, and making sure we elect people into office that are going to serve the values we believe in. That is how we get it done. So now, what are the differences between us and them that I mentioned? Here it is. Our side believes that a baby, an infant, from the time of its inception, is a blessing from the Almighty and is endowed by that Creator with certain inalienable rights. And the first one of those rights is the right to life. That is what we believe. The other side believes that it's just a clump of cells, that it's a choice. That baby can be left on the table to cry itself to death. They literally cheer at the thought of infanticide. They cheer at it. That's the differences between our party. What else is the difference between our party? Between the two? Our side knows that free men are armed men and women. Our side understands that governments with all the power and all the guns always become despotic. Our side knows that our Second Amendment rights were endowed to us by our Creator and affirmed in our Constitution. And our side knows that we're going to hold on to those rights, yes, come hell or high water. What does the other side believe? The other side believes you're too stupid to own an AR-15. They think you should only have a shotgun or a single shot Derringer pistol if you can have that. It was disgusting to hear Michael Bloomberg stand on that stage and tell that gentleman, I get credible threats every day. Look here, tell that to the single mom living in a dangerous neighborhood surrounded by the Crips and the Bloods. Tell that to her. Tell that to her about the credible threats. Tell that to the elderly gentleman or elderly woman that lives by themselves and lives out in a rural community. Tell them about the credible threat, unfortunately, of those who are hooked on drugs and will do anything to get the money to feed their drug habit. Credible threats face us all. And here it is. Had I been there in that hall that day, I would have told him that the most credible threat that we have to our freedom, the most credible threat that we have to ourselves, unfortunately, tends to be our own government. And that's why the founding fathers put that Second Amendment into place, to make sure that government stays in check. But that's what they believe. They believe that you shouldn't have that right. What else do they believe? They believe in taking your children for 8 hours a day in what's supposed to be public instruction, and they turn it into public indoctrination. You send your children off as good Christians and good patriots to elementary school, junior high school, college. And the descendants of Karl Marx send them back to you as socialists. Folks, we can no longer sit by idly and let that happen. The reason why, one of the main reasons why I chose to run for lieutenant governor is to wrestle our public education system away from these leftists. They did not build it. They did not create it. It was created by good Christian patriots need to wrestle it away from it and set it back on the course that it's supposed to be on, which is to teach our children educational principles, how to operate in this constitutional republic. And we've got to be the generation that does it. So there's a stark difference there between what we believe in education. What else do they believe? They believe that those folks that would bleed our welfare system dry should be at the top of the list. Those folks, and no offense to anybody that might have them, because I have some myself, but those folks who have willingly made student debt should have it paid for by people who don't have the degrees. College is an investment, and in an investment you must pay a price. But those folks don't believe that. They believe that college should be free for any and everybody, and there should be no investment in it. We don't believe that. We believe that our children, number one, don't necessarily need a college degree to make it in life. We know that. Number two, if they are going to get a college degree, we know they should go there and they should get an education, not an indoctrination. And before they even set one foot in that place, make one dime of debt, they should have a plan, not only to get through school, but to pay that debt back and earn that college degree, just like we've done in times past. So there's a huge difference there. And finally, folks, what else is a huge difference? Here's a huge difference between us and them. We love our military and we love our veterans. You see, we know, because we've got our priorities in order, who we should be putting first. And who should we be putting first? We should be putting our veterans first. We should be putting our elderly first. We should be putting the handicapped first. We should be putting those who have done first, not those who won't do first. And we support our law enforcement officers as they protect us on the street every day. We understand that only one thing stands between civilization and chaos. And that is that man and woman in that blue uniform that wears that badge and wears that gun and puts their lives on the line every day for us. But the other side, what do? They call those young men and women, those brave young men and women, they call them racist. They say they're violent. They spread false narratives about them. They try to run them out of the profession for whatever reason God only knows. But it's a stark difference in how we treat them and how they treat them. And we need to make sure that any person that's going into public office, any elected official that's going into public office, honors and respects law enforcement. Of course, bad law enforcement officers need to be dealt with harshly. But 99.999% of the men and women who serve in law enforcement in this nation are good people doing an honorable job for the right reasons. And we need to stand behind them as they do it and continue to show that stark difference between us and them when it comes to law enforcement. You know, these stark differences, they didn't just start this year. And they didn't just start with Ronald Reagan. from the inception of this party, and that had stark differences. This party was started to see that this nation live up to the true meaning of its creed for liberty for all. It led the charge to bring this fractured nation back together during and after the Civil War. It led the charge against Jim Crow in the South. It led the charge during the Civil Rights Movement. It led the charge for to give women the right to vote. Folks, we have got to do one thing in this party to expand this party, and it's this. We have got to control the narrative. We have got to start telling people who Republicans are and who they always have been. This party, not that one, is the party of freedom and equality, and it always has been. And we need to shout that from the mountaintops. We need to tell folks that it was Republicans that cried freedom over the issue of slavery, that cried unity during the Civil War, that cried suffrage for women in the 1900s, and cried for reversal of Jim Crow during the Civil Rights Movement. We have a long and proud tradition, the Republican Party does in this nation. They call us the Grand Old Party. And the reason why we are called the Grand Old Party is because we have a grand and glorious history. We need to spread that narrative, control that narrative, draw other people under us and let them know that this is the party that makes victors. The other side makes victims. Thank you very much, guys.